So, welcome to the podcast. We're joined by Josh Mordecai from Good and Proper Tea. In their own words, let me talk to you about Good and Proper. Good and Proper are premium tea specialists, loved and served by the UK's finest cafes, hotels, restaurants, and workspaces. From their careful approach to sourcing to their commitment to sustainability, and of course, the quality and flavour in every cup, this female-led team is on a mission to show the world how good tea can be when it's done right. Joining me now is the operations manager, Josh Mordecai, who, if I'm not mistaken, is not a woman.
No, I'm not the founder. Emily's the founder. My official job title is the Director of Operations and Business Development. So Brilliant. I oversee our end-to-end supply chain. Yes. So that's getting the tea from the tea growing places into the products which we sell and to our end users, in short, and everything that happens in between that. And I also oversee our business development team. So I joined Good and Proper Tea almost 7 years ago now.
Yes.
So I actually joined the business when our founder Emily was about to have her first child, to help run the day-to-day. And I was joined on a short-term contract, and I've been there ever since. And I absolutely love it. It's a fantastic place to work.
That sounds like a large. You're overseeing quite a lot of the business there. It sounds like you might stay awake at night.
Yeah. Well, as I told you earlier, I stayed awake last night because I drank a lot of matcha before I went to bed, which was a terrible idea. So, no, it is quite a wide-ranging role, but those two roles are really, really linked because I guess it's kind of evolved into that role over time, and we'll get into where the business has come and where we're going. But yeah, I think operations and sales are really linked. So I guess I kind of when the business development team sell a lot of tea, it's with mixed emotions for me because I then know that we have to get more tea. So I'm going to be in charge of doing that. Yeah, we're selling lots of tea, but then we need to get the tea there.
I'm looking forward to unpacking this hybrid role then, because I mean, how many people on the team in full?
So we've got a full-time team 6 at the moment, but we are going to be hiring very, very soon to grow that team. We're growing very quickly. And yeah, as we're going to get into, we've outsourced quite a lot of our functions as well. So we've outsourced our logistics, we work with a co-packer. So that's a kind of core team in our London office who oversee sales, marketing, account management, finance, and the other functions are managed by third parties.
Brilliant. So a good size, and it'd be really good to unpack your sort of hybrid role. So take me through. So Good and Proper is about 12 years old. Let's go back to the early days and how it started out. And
yeah, I think a lot has happened in those 12 years, and I think if I try and tell you everything, we won't get onto any other questions. But in short, our founder Emily was working in London just over 12 years ago. She was in marketing, and she has never been a coffee drinker. And at the time, she would go out with friends or with colleagues, and specialty coffee's come a long way since then. But even back then, there were specialty cafes where her friends would order a coffee, flat white or whatever it was, and it would be prepared by a barista. It was a quality coffee. It was prepared with care. It was prepared properly. They could tell you where the beans were from. And Emily would order a tea, and the same can be said for her tea experience. It was generally a low-grade commodity tea bag, chucked in some hot water, probably not brewed for the right amount of time, squeezed against the side with a teaspoon, and she was just charged at £2.50, and she was left very disappointed. It was the same tea you could buy in the supermarket, and she knew tea and knew how good it could be if you did it properly. So basically set out to solve that problem. So we actually started out life on a van, an old Citroen H van, and we were the first UK brand on Kickstarter. So Emily bought the van and then crowdfunded the money to kit out the van into a tea bar, and made the video. Was the first brand on there. All the friends were like, what is Kickstarter? Why are people going to just give you money for this project? But it turns out there were loads of other frustrated tea drinkers out there. And the project was funded really quickly. Emily kitted out the van. sourced a handful, sort of 4 at the time, of really great teas. I was fortunate enough to start working from the beginning with some really great suppliers in India and other tea growing places. And then obviously alongside the tea, she needed to serve something else to eat, and served crumpets. So sort of quintessentially British thing to serve alongside tea is a crumpet.
Yeah.
And set out around markets around London. We were with Curb for a long time outside of what is now Coldrops Yard. And we also did festivals, or we do festivals around the country. So the likes of Wilderness, Latitude. And it turns out, yeah, there was a lot of frustrated tea drinkers out there, and people really want to drink great tea. So yeah, it was an opportunity to kind of find out that there was a demand for great tea. And from that, we moved into some physical retail spaces. So we had tea bars around London. We had various locations. The sort of flagship one was on Leather Lane near Hatton Garden.
Right.
So at that point, we'd expanded the range of teas. It was a tea bar, but kind of like a specialty cafe, as you'd know it. We did do coffee as well, but a huge range of teas, and it was a bit of a mecca for tea drinkers. So yeah, branched out into retail, a physical space, and from that, a B2B business grew sort of by mistake, because we were doing tea really well, and other cafes and restaurants were coming to us and saying, "Well, your tea is really good. Yeah. We would like to serve it, and we would like to know how to serve it properly." So a B2B business grew from there, and kind of fast forward to today, that is the real serving hospitality is the real growth engine for the business at the moment. We are now served in over 1,500 cafes, restaurants, hotels, offices. Independent cafes are our bread and butter because that's where we started out. So we're served in a lot of independent cafes, particularly in London where we're based. We've also got a retail range, which is available direct to consumers from our website. And then we work with a handful of premium retailers as well. Probably the most well-known of those is Cardo, who have listed our loose leaf range of teas for, I think, coming on to 4 or 5 years now. And our tea bags are just about to go live on there as well. So yeah, there's been a lot of twists and turns, but as of last month, we are selling 2 tons of tea and herb per month, which equates to about 1 million cups of tea a month, which was when we realized that was the case, we were pretty blown away, because we kind of have quite humble beginnings serving cups of tea on a van, now we're serving 1 million cups of tea a month.
And I noticed on your Insta that Ellie was at it is Ellie, isn't it? I've got that right. Emily, sorry. Emily was at 10 Downing Street a few weeks ago.
Yes, yeah, we're part of a group called By Women Built, and as part of that, a handful of the members of By Women Built were invited to 10 Downing Street, and actually our tea was served by, I can't remember her name now, the terrible Rishi Sunak's wife, was hosting the event.
Mrs. Sunak.
Yes.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, that's exciting. So I'm just having a look at, so obviously that's an amazing trajectory that you've gone on through those 12 years. Congratulations. So we always love hearing about our customer success stories. Obviously, right slap bang in the middle of that, and probably in the middle of your tenure, COVID came along. So I want to go back to food. You call it food service, but I tend to call it out of home, on trade, or
I mean, I guess they're all
specific to beverage. Food service. Why do you call it food service?
I guess food service is massive because it encompasses everything from independent cafes, offices, healthcare, government, leisure, events. It's just so basically anywhere that you are. Wet sales of tea, I suppose you got to say. Anywhere where tea is being served and prepared.
So we'll come back to that. I want to talk about COVID. So talk me through how you guys had to pivot during COVID.
Yeah, I mean, COVID was very tough for everyone. At the time, 90% of what we were doing was food service, hospitality, whatever you want to call it. and that switched off overnight, pretty much when the first lockdown happened. So that left all of our customers in incredibly difficult situations. They couldn't open their doors. They were left with a lot of stock. So yeah, we immediately had to, and obviously there was a huge amount of uncertainty. So I mean, this was before the furlough scheme came in. We were kind of like, okay, what are we going to do with the staff? Are we going to all work half time? And kind of, I'll actually look back on my notes from the first week of COVID and laugh, because they were just like, obviously no one knew what was going to happen, but they were completely ridiculous. It's quite laughable to look back at them now. But when the furlough scheme was put in place, we had to furlough our entire team of sales and account managers, and kind of really strip back to the bare bones. And we operated an incredibly lean team. So it was myself, it was Emily, our founder, and then Ollie, who was our warehouse manager at the time. So just managing the operation. And at the time, we were doing all our own distribution, and some of even the tea packing was happening in that warehouse in Brockley. So the two that were left behind were incredibly busy, even though our hospitality business had fallen off a cliff. There was still a lot to do. So we then had to operate as this kind of trio in this strange new world. So that required us to put
So you 90% of your business was food service. That dropped off a cliff. Did you have a e-commerce platform at the time, or did you have to?
We had a D2C. We've always had a website selling our retail products. We've had retail products from definitely before I started the business. I think in the first instance they were packed by Emily at a kitchen table into craft pouches, and now the packaging's evolved. But we've always had a website. Like lots of other businesses, online blew up. Everyone was at home. Some people were still working, so had some disposable income, and were so we saw a massive spike, and that was a bit of a lifeline. And the other thing was that, as I mentioned before, we had a lot of stock of food service bags. So sat in our warehouse. So kind of that was first thought was, okay, we're gonna have a massive cash flow issue here. So we put those on there, and it turns out that people are really interested in having sort of bigger bags, better value. They're at home drinking lots of tea, and those products are still on there to this day.
We have at home, I think we're on subscription for 200, or not subscription maybe, but we get 250, which it must be so of your peppermint. I can't go back to other peppermints. I have gone in. I'm like, oh, that's so disappointing when you go to someone's house and they get you a peppermint tea out. They're like, oh, because you can taste this three-dimensional piece with your tea, I find anyway.
Thank you.
Anyway, right.
I think there was a cash flow challenge, and we approached that in a really collaborative way with our suppliers and our customers. I think we recognized that everyone was in this together, and that we needed to work together to kind of navigate this tricky period. So I think in the first instance, a lot of the time was speaking to our suppliers and our customers about how we're going to manage this and manage payments. And I think coming out the other side, we're quite proud of that collaborative approach that we had with our customers and our suppliers. But going back to D2C, we took the opportunity to actually spruce up the website a little bit. We worked with an agency to look at SEO, etc. We migrated to Shopify, and one of the main benefits there were lots of benefits, was that it integrated with Unleashed. So we migrating to Shopify. But that was for me as the operations manager. The fact that it integrates with Unleashed was great.
So you already had.
But I think,
just talk me through your tech stack. So before COVID, you had Zero, Unleashed, anything else?
So Unleashed, when I first joined, one of the first things I did was assist with the rollout of Unleashed. So we've had Unleashed from very early days.
And how is that? Some of our customers are very prospects are quite small, and they're like, no, it's too early. I don't want to outlay the few hundred a month at this stage for the product. But how do you find it? Because obviously we advocate for as early adoption as possible, because things get more weighty and complicated the more successful you are. What's your thoughts on
I
that?
often say that I should be on commission for Unleashed because I, I recommend your product and I go on about how great it is to a lot of other brands.
Yeah,
Uh,
thank you.
we adopted it relatively early on in our life cycle, which I think probably makes implementation easier. If we were to migrate or to roll out something similar now as a larger business, it would be a lot more complicated. It also created a huge amount of transparency for us at the time, which was great at the time. But I think as you grow, you appreciate that even more.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, it creates a huge amount of transparency. It allows you to migrate from multiple spreadsheets that are probably open to more human error. And I think especially during COVID when we're such a small team, it saves a huge amount of time as well. Even though it is costly, I think you more than make that back in time saved and uh, yeah, definitely less stress.
Yeah. And I mean, we would advocate the fact that you've got that clarity. We can come on to talk about clarity of margin and all the other cost savings that are involved with that
Yeah.
clarity. Let's go on to yeah, so just a bit more on good and proper then. So, you know, I think we've kind of covered it a little bit, but your USP, how do you ensure stand out in the marketplace? And how does your supply chain play a part in your sort of brand and USP?
So I'm saying the barriers to entry for tea are very low, and then therefore it's important for us to be able to stand out in what is quite a competitive and crowded marketplace. We need to have USPs to stand out, which we have multiple USPs. So I'd say first of all is the quality of our tea. We go to great lengths to source really good teas, and we've been building up relationships with suppliers at origin over the 12 years we've been a business. We do a lot of tasting to ensure that our products stand out and that we are sourcing the best possible tea we can for the price point that we're trying to hit. And that tea is a seasonal product, so you have to keep tasting. So we're actually currently tasting a lot of Darjeeling. It's second flush Darjeeling is just coming through. So our partners in India are sending out lots of tiny little sachets full of Darjeeling tea, which relate to a particular invoice, which is a large lot of tea. We have to then taste all of those and decide which ones we want to get the best tasting teas.
Wow.
So yeah, tea tastes really good. Second of all is, and you could, when you spoke about the brand, was the level of support and service we provide. So the customers can have the best tea in the world, but if they're not brewing it properly, they're not going to bring out that flavor. So we do loads of training. We've got loads of digital resources. We send out brew cards. We go to our customers and taste the teas with them and make sure that they have everything they need so that the tea in their cup tastes really good.
Yeah.
And I guess what feeds into that is the fact that we ran our own cafes, tea bars. So we understand the challenges that come with serving tea in that hospitality setting, which a lot of our competitors have never had their own cafes or restaurants. So we have that authority and that real world experience that we can share with our customers.
I can imagine any other competitor's tea doesn't come with, you know, the training and the cards and all that value add. Would that be right? Does
Yeah,
that stand out for you?
yeah. I mean, lots of tea companies do similar things, but yeah, we understand that in order for people to realize that our brand's really good, we rely on the cafes that we work with to make the tea taste good. Because if they for instance, brew the green tea for too long and they extract those bitter tannins and you get that bitter taste, or the water's too hot. So yeah, it's making sure that they have everything they need to be able to serve great tea.
Technical
also,
question with green
yeah,
tea. So on the boxes that you've sent us, it says 75 degrees C. How
yeah.
do I at home achieve a 75 degrees C with my kettle?
So best in class would be a temperature controlled kettle, which
Right.
you can buy relatively cheaply. There's different kind of levels, I suppose, but there's a few hacks. So you could just submerge the tea bag in a little bit of cold water. So then when you pour boiling water on there, it lowers the temperature of the water, and you're not going to burn the leaves. So that's a
Oh
little
man,
hack you
that's
could use
good.
at
I
home.
love that. Oh, this is
Yeah.
worth talking already, Josh. I'm done for the day. This is I love it, my little life hacks. Right, sorry, back on. Go
So what
on.
were we talking about? Our USP. Yeah, I
USP.
think availability. I think ensuring that we've got really that our customers can always, especially in a food service setting, that our customers have no reason to go elsewhere. We've won plenty of business from other tea brands whose English breakfast tea, which is a core part of any cafe's offering, that probably makes up 50% of what they're selling, goes off sale, and they need to go. They need tea, so they get in touch with us, and they say we can't get any breakfast tea at the moment. We do whatever we can to make sure we have breakfast tea the entire time. It's the most important product in our range in that respect. So yeah, availability, and then I would lastly say I think our level of customer service is really, really good. So kind of having best in class customer service and going above and beyond, and we're always willing to pick up the phone.
Yeah, sort of post sales service. Yeah, after sales. Yeah. Yeah, lovely, amazing. That's really, really helpful. Yeah, so I suppose it might be the same question, might be the same answer, so different question, same answer. So tell me if it is. So I think you've kind of answered it. How do you get people to drink tea out of home? But I think basically you're telling me that there are just, I mean, like that there's a percentage of the public that want better tea.
Well,
But go
I
on.
think so. While we consider ourselves a tea drinking nation, the majority of the tea that's been drunk or has been drunk in the UK is low quality, cheap, poorly paid for kind of commodity tea that's brewed badly. So we have a bit of a job on our hands there to kind of change people's perception of tea.
Yeah.
So I think the first place people go out at that out of home experience, people are looking for something slightly different, slightly better than what they might be drinking at home. And you've seen that with coffee, you've seen it with beer. There is a kind of general trend for premiumization, and the first place people have that is with specialty retailers out of home. So where you probably have a bit more time for the barista or the bartender working behind to tell you more about the product, why it costs more, why it tastes better. So you're also willing to spend a bit more because it's out of home. So yeah, that forms part of our strategy. Really, we want to get as many people as possible drinking good and proper tea, and the kind of out of home experience is where that's first going to happen.
And you wouldn't ever, you say you're in a handful of retailers, but your business strategy is mainly food service. Would that ever change in the future?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, our mission is to get more people drinking good tea and raise the profile of good tea. So that whether that's out of home or at home. But in terms of our strategy, I think nailing that out of home offering and having people experience that better tasting tea when they're out and about, experience the brand, have it explained to them by whoever's serving it why it costs that little bit more, why it's better. Having that really great out of home experience will then feed further down the line. I think you've seen it happen with coffee, and a tea is a little bit behind coffee in that kind of that life cycle. But I think the standard of coffee being served at home at the moment is much higher than it was previously, and you can see that on the supermarket shelves as well. You can go to a Sainsbury's and there is really low grade commodity coffee, and then kind of different grades right up until kind of the top tier stuff, which is very expensive. The same can't be said for tea at the moment. The tea aisle, if you go into a supermarket, is generally cheap, low grade commodity tea. And we're doing our best outside of retail at the moment to kind of promote specialty tea. And we would absolutely love for our products to be on a shelf in retail, and I'm sure we will get there. But kind of our broader strategy is to promote it out of home, and then retail will follow.
I think we started buying you when it was COVID, basically, and we were like, well, we're not going anywhere, so we're going to treat ourselves to nice tea at home, and we haven't stopped. Because once you've gone there, you can't go back. You're like, everything else is so flat and disappointing. Right, go on. Sorry, you were going to say something.
Can I just grab a drink of water?
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to talk about supply and inventory. I've got a few questions on that. So a lot of your supply chain is outsourced. I want you to tell me or talk me through kind of what that looks like and what are the challenges about managing an outsourced supply chain.
Yeah, so we moved to we changed. We used to have as I said, when COVID happened, we had our warehouse in Brockley. We had our office sat above it, and then below that we had a warehouse where the majority of our products were stored and picked and packed. Our products are now, every single one of our tea products is packed by a third party in the UK. So that's loose leaf tea bags across the retail range and food service.
Yeah.
They're sent directly to our third party logistics partner, who handle all our pick and packing and get that out to our D2C customers, our food service customers. So that's all happening from that hub.
Yeah.
And then our office in London is where our head office team sits. So you have sales and accounts management functions, finance, marketing, and then operations happening from there. So I guess one of the challenges we first noticed was that we were less flexible and lead times were longer. When we had all our stock sat beneath us, we could easily, if a delivery had failed or someone needed something, we could easily go and get that product. We could hand deliver it if we needed to, or someone could come and pick it up from us in Brockley. And some of our customers like to just come and pick up their products from us. So I think they were a bit upset when we said, no, they're now going to be stored on the South Coast in Arundel. So yeah, I think that was, obviously there's a huge amount of benefits that comes to working with third parties, and we'll get onto that. But yeah, I think that just required us to have better processes, organization, and forced us to be more disciplined, which is probably no bad thing.
Yeah.
Secondly, I'd say quality control. You're less close to your products. We're not packing the orders ourselves. So I think we're control freaks. So I think handing that over to someone else was a big step for us. But I think what we've realized is that the people that we're working with are experts in their field. We spoke to lots and lots of different companies. There was a tender process that we went through. We got recommendations. We made sure that they had the correct certifications. We visited their sites. We talked to them in depth about all their own systems and processes. So yeah, we chose experts, and now they do arguably a much better job than we were doing. But I think what's really important is having building those relationships with them. And we see it as a partnership. I think, for instance, with our 3PL, we recently won a really large bit of events business that I don't think I'm allowed to say who it is, but it's a big, large event that we are going to be providing the tea for. Yeah. And they had really demands outside of our usual kind of scope for deliveries. They want deliveries like in the middle of the night, and they need to be dedicated deliveries. And I called the owner of the 3PL, spoke to him about it. He said, absolutely, we'll do this, whatever it takes. So yeah, I think having really strong relationships and working with, which we've built over time, has been really important.
And do you speak to them every day? Like how often? Like you say, good relationship. What is a good relationship?
We have regularly with our co-packer. We have a weekly call. Yeah. I think it's a bi-weekly call we have with the 3PL.
Yeah. So it's reasonably much. So not loads of your time, which is what you want really when you're outsourcing all that.
Yeah, and I think the sort of kind of setup process, there were obviously teething issues, and I think it was kind of short-term pain for what has been long-term gain.
Yeah, sounds good. So just to sort of paint pictures for people at home then, you've got like 13 countries that the components are coming in from, or your ingredients is coming in from, and you're in charge of all that, and I'm assuming no one sort of journey of tea is similar to another one, that they're not the same. So can you just talk us through two different kind of variants in supply chain or
sure.
tea journey?
I mean, first of all, so we have teas, which is anything that comes from the Camellia sinensis plant. So that's green teas, black teas, white teas, oolong teas.
Love white tea, yeah.
So that's anything that comes from the tea growing the tea plant, and that so it's the growing region and then the manufacturing style that gives each tea its unique flavor. And we want to showcase different teas from different growing regions. So we source from it's actually 7 regions that grow tea. It grows in a lot more places than that. So we grow 7 regions that are growing tea, and then herbs, which and strictly aren't teas, they're herbal infusions, but we call them teas. So those are from different plants, and those grow in other growing regions. So we have herbs that come from 6 different regions. Right. So each region has its own seasonality, has its own supply chain, has its own sort of nuances when it comes to sustainability as well. So looking at 2 different supply chains, we have, I think a good example is our peppermint that comes from Germany. Right. And that is generally, we need to get this right now, that is generally harvested, I think around now, the peppermint harvest is happening. Yeah. And it's only coming from Germany. So we need to, it's obviously coming less far. The harvest is happening in June. So we're telling our peppermint supplier, this is how much peppermint we're going to need until the next harvest happens. Yeah. So completely different lead times, completely different seasonality. Whereas in India, we are currently speaking to our growing partners there. So for instance, Darjeeling, that the second flush Darjeeling is happening right now. So we've given them how much volume we're going to need, but that will be picked and processed in the next few weeks.
And second flush, you've already had, so first flush happened earlier in the year, is that right? And that's
we don't actually
pricey flush, isn't it?
Yeah, we don't we don't have first flush Darjeeling as part of our core range, but yeah, that would have happened earlier on in the tea growing season in that growing region. So not only are we telling them how much tea we need, we're having to look way further ahead. So these teas the Indian teas, they're not going to reach us probably until about October, November.
Wow.
And they need to last until the next October and November, when we would have chosen the following season's teas.
Okay.
So, and that's just 2.
Can we dip into demand forecasting as a natural? I'm skipping forward a couple of questions, but
yeah.
I'm thinking, right, so how do you manage that from a demand forecasting point of view? How do you know how much tea you need? Yeah,
I mean that's the challenge, and we're growing very quickly. We've got multiple channels. So yeah, we do predominantly food service, but those we also have retail, we have D2C, so we source approximately 30 teas, but then those 30 teas are going into different formats. So they might be going to a large format food service bag or a retail product. So demand forecasting is a real challenge, because you're having to look at not only what you're going to sell in what format, but then what tea is going to be going in there. We use sea freight to reduce carbon emissions. When we were a smaller business, we did ship some stuff by air, but now we have that volume, we can get stuff by sea. So the lead times are much longer. So yeah, demand forecasting is a real challenge. And I think just having accurate data to hand that you can interrogate is really, really important. So obviously segueing nicely into using Unleashed and yeah.
Yeah, so do you add a kind of nominal increase though year on year? Like how do you go? So you're growing, you've got the data there, but do you kind of go, right, we'll increase whatever by 5%, 10%? I mean,
it's a combination of things, and it's an art, not a science. It's we'll look at how much we sold last year, how many more customers we've onboarded, what customers are taking which products. So I'll often look at historical growth by channel, often splitting that between distributors and who we're servicing directly. So yeah, it's really challenging, and we try and get as much data as we can and then make an educated guess. And we're fortunate that we have partners who we work with who will, we say we're going to build in a buffer, because as I said, availability is key. So the worst thing for us is not having a product, especially given the length of those lead times and the fact that we want to be selling the best tea. I'd say an example recently of a forecasting win, I'd say is sort of like we identified that the market for matcha, driven by matcha lattes, I think there's most cafes now have matcha lattes as part of their offering. They look great on Instagram. I think that's probably part of the trend. But we noticed that was significantly increasing and forecasted accordingly. We're quite bullish and work closely with our supply partners to try and to meet this demand that we thought was going to be there. And we've actually seen 155% year-on-year growth in our latte grade matcha. But we've managed to maintain really good availability throughout that, and it's now our highest grossing product. Yeah, but yeah, I think having that data at your fingertips and being able to interrogate it, have confidence in it, and being able to interrogate it quickly is really important.
Brilliant. I'm still fascinated by that matcha stuff. Yeah, I spoke to another customer of ours, Three Spirit. Have you heard of them? They do they do kind of non-alcoholic spirits and
yeah. I'm in touch with them actually.
Yeah, David Press is the guy I spoke to probably over 2 years ago now, but he's the same job as you, but they also sell in America. But he said like his worst nightmare one day was they have quite a big TikTok following, lots of people, Instagram influencers, TikTok, that kind of thing. And something went viral on TikTok. One of the SKUs went viral, and he said there's no amount of demand forecasting that can actually that can help you in that situation. He sold out of everything, and it's just a man sort of scrambling backwards and trying to respond to the surge. So yeah, good. It's like
I think that's when that's when your supply partners and your manufacturing partners and building those relationships and having really good relationships with those, that part of your business really is key.
Yeah, lovely. So we've talked a bit about that. So let's talk a bit about margin then. So you've got around 200 SKUs, and you've got multiple ingredients going into those, and so you've got that kind of that breakdown, that average order not average order value, making sure that you're capturing all the costs that are going into each SKU and that kind of thing. And you mentioned that you were able to work on improving your margins. Do you just want to talk a bit about how how you do that, how you go about that?
I think so we've created a huge amount of transparency with Unleash. So just knowing that the margins we're looking at, we can look at them with a degree of confidence. I'd say, as every single business will probably attest to, so the last 2 years have been really challenging from a margin perspective. We've seen cost price increases across the board, as have our suppliers. Sea freight has gone up. All the things you've probably spoken to loads of other brands about, the challenges that we've seen over the last 2 years. And we want to make sure that our teas remain accessibly priced for the quality and the level of service that we provide, and that we can continue to do that. But at the same time, we need to maintain our margin and hopefully in time improve it. So I guess as we've grown, we've managed to achieve efficiencies at scale. So larger production runs, larger purchases of tea. And I think in the current climate, that's often just meant that we've been able to tread water cost-wise. So I think while we do seek to improve margins where we can, I think it has been a challenge over the last couple of years. We work collaboratively with our co-packers and our logistics partner to find efficiencies. So I think having those regular check-ins, visiting their sites, them saying, this is really slowing us down. Is there anything you can do to change that, whether it's a pack size or a part of the process that we can change to just create efficiencies? And I guess having that data there, we love having data. We've got our tech stack bill is higher than we'd like it to be, but we see having that transparency and being able to make data-driven decisions is really important for us.
Awesome. I want to leave stock and inventory, and I really want to spend a tiny bit of time with your your green agenda and sustainability that Good and Proper are leaders in, I would argue. So, first of all, congrats on being a B Corp. That's quite a recent thing, isn't it? Was it like 4 months ago?
Yeah, pretty recently, and we're really pleased with our score. We got a score of 90, or I need to get this right now, 97.4.
Yeah, congrats. Awesome.
Which I believe is the highest scoring of any UK tea brand.
That is something to shout about. I'm sure your marketing people are already onto that. Although lots of people still don't know what B Corp is. Like, you talk to anyone in the school and they have no clue what a B Corp is. So it needs more marketing spend behind that, I think, to make that.
Yeah, I think
Leverage.
awareness is growing. I was at a event last night with a large contract caterer, and B Corp is like top of their agenda. I think they've tasked their sites with ordering 30% of their spend being from B Corp.
So maybe
So,
I'm just talking about people on the street, but your audience,
yeah.
your food service audience, is becoming quite an important element with suppliers.
Yeah, and I would say that. I think sustainability is top of the agenda. What's frustrating is that often larger businesses just want to tick that box, when, as I kind of alluded to before, it is a lot more nuanced than that. As a business, we have our sort of values of doing things properly. We've tried to. That's how we've wanted to run the business from the beginning, and it's always been part of our fabric. I think becoming B Corp certified has been a really great lens to look at the business at holistically as we scale, and make decisions. I think making decisions through the lens of B Corp it's a really powerful tool as we grow. I've definitely found since we became a B Corp, when I'm making business decisions, it's like, okay, and how would we look at this as a B Corp?
Through that
And
lens,
what are those environmental or social considerations that we also need to be making? Because making profit is not the only goal. It's doing right by people and the planet. So yeah, it's been.
Go on, sorry.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, looking forward to growing our impact as we scale the business.
I think it's I think it's fascinating the way you framed that there, because like most people, I think in my mind it's like we've got to do things a certain way to get the B Corp, but actually it's not. It's an ongoing framework for you guys. And I was speaking to a round table earlier this year. We had Emma Fromberg on from the Institute of Sustainability. Institute of Cambridge for Sustainability Leadership. I have completely crunched that their name, but basically she was sort of talking about this massive mind shift that everybody needs to make if they're going to really truly make a difference. And it is a massive mind shift to think about things in a very different way. And I was talking with her about this sort of 2, 3, 4 years from now, the macro, the things that people sort of find important, or so for example, I think this is just my personal opinion. I think it would be very uncool to go take a plane on holiday in about 2 or 3 years' time. I think you'll hide that information from your friends if that's something you're doing. You won't be posting pictures of you abroad. It'll be the coolest thing to do will be finding something to do near you, and also fixing things, like going to a repair shop and having tea will be a very cool Instagrammable thing to do. And this is just me in my head, talking to all the customers I talk to and everything else. So I just think there is a massive mind shift that the buying public need to make in the next few years. Obviously, it's starting with you. You have your B Corp, and now you're having to use that lens going forward. And it is this guiding, very strong guiding arm for you.
I think people generally want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
But they might not necessarily know what that is or understand it. But I think they generally have good intentions. But it's sort of explaining that to them. I think packaging is one which is a constant headache. I think so packaging in tea is really important because we want to protect the leaf. Like that's the key thing, is making sure that when it gets to that customer, that the leaf is still intact. So we call it finding the least worst option, because you want to find something which protects the leaf, but that is also has as least impact on the environment as possible.
Yeah.
And I think loose leaf tea is by far and away the most environmentally friendly way to drink tea, because there is much less packaging. There's much less processing that's happened to that packaging, so it's much less carbon intensive. The leaves are literally just going into the bag, and then you're using them at home, and you can easily throw them on your compost or put them in your food waste bin. But there's a whole conversation around tea bags and plastic in tea bags, which is great, but there's a really easy answer to that, and that is just for people to buy loose tea. It's cheap. The cost per serve is cheaper for the customer, so they get better value for money. it's much less impactful on the environment, and the tea tastes better. But
And
still, to this day,
just to
people want
clarify,
to.
is there plastic in your tea bags?
No, our tea bags have always been
Yeah.
plastic free.
Yeah.
They're made of a plant-based material called Cylon,
Yeah.
which is industrially impossible.
Right, lovely, lovely. Okay, we've covered off quite a few things then that I wanted to talk about. So from you're working with something called SME Climate Hub, just so to get your B Corp, and the fact that I've got a quote here from Emily, which says, you know, getting a B Corp validates your long-standing commitment with conducting business with integrity and doing things properly, which is obviously a lovely brand play there as well. So you've always done things, you know, properly. Just unpack that a bit more. So you're working with SME Climate Hub, which is a global organization. Just sort of paint the picture of how you went about getting your B Corp and what you do in the sustainability space.
Can I pass the question on SME Climate Hub, because Emily's much closer to it and I haven't looked it up. I can definitely follow up afterwards with an email with what's in it. But that's the one question I didn't have a chance to go over quickly.
I'm going to look into it anyway and do a bit more on it, because I think it's something that our prospects and customers will really want to know about. It sounds like a helping hand for, you know, it's always a big sustainability for smaller businesses. They don't have the resource and manpower and to you know, rise to that. But it you know, if the small companies can all get together, they'll have an easier time of it. I think it's all about that, really. But I like you, I need to.
Yeah, sorry, it's just an area I haven't been directly involved with it, and I'm probably not the best person to comment on it.
Don't worry. But to talk about, like, let's talk about then Darjeeling, for example. So you guys put out a blog. You went with Emily to Darjeeling. Is it this year? Last year?
Yeah, it was over a year ago now.
So your definition of sustainability is quite different from what you would imagine it to be. And can you just sort of talk to me about what the challenges Darjeeling are going through at the moment?
So yeah, Darjeeling as a growing region has got multiple challenges. First of all is a climate challenge. Climate change, tea is a naturally growing product, and climate change is affecting when the rain comes, how much rain comes. So that is affecting the yield, the quality of the tea. And these are small tea growing communities in the foothills of the Himalayas. Obviously, the emissions which are affecting them are mainly coming from Western countries or developed nations. So while there's certain things they can do to reduce their carbon emissions, they are not the problem here. It's other countries that are causing the climate to change, which is then impacting their crop. So there's a climate issue. There's also a general labour issue. There's a move away. The population is becoming more educated, which is great. But generations who've worked on tea plantations for years and years are actually moving away and finding jobs elsewhere. So there is a labour issue there. I'm not going to go into it now because it's quite complicated, but the way the tea plantations work in India is that people and the tea workers and their families live on the estate, and they're given housing, they're given healthcare, and that is funded or part funded by the tea estate owners. Their dependents live on the tea estates as well. So while they're having to support them with all these amenities, which is great, and over time the government has put in measures to make sure that these people are much better looked after, they do have a problem with absenteeism as well on the tea estates, where people are finding jobs elsewhere, or their dependents are finding jobs elsewhere and are not showing up to work. So then lastly, they also have a problem with tea which is imported from Nepal, and those tea growing countries, the tea growing in Nepal, they have different rules and regulations, but grow a similar type and style of tea. They don't necessarily have the overheads that the Indian tea estates have in terms of looking after the people who live on the estates. So they can undercut them in terms of price. It gets imported illegally and sold as Darjeeling. So it's a really, Darjeeling is a great tasting tea. It's known as the champagne of teas, but it has a lot of sustainability issues that are really particular to that region. So there's a real campaign that's called Drink Darjeeling to Save Darjeeling, and we want to highlight the profile of Darjeeling and the great teas they're growing there and get more people drinking it. It's part of one of our breakfast blends, which is a really, really great breakfast tea, and that's the majority of the Darjeeling we sell actually goes through that.
So if I buy just your breakfast blend, it has Darjeeling in it?
Our broccoli breakfast blend has Darjeeling.
Broccoli breakfast, sorry, I'm making a note. Save Darjeeling. Yeah, so what I find fascinating about that is you're looking at sustainability from the product, and how can we make sure that the growing region is flourishing, and it is and combating the issues that they're against. It isn't necessary. It is partly climate driven, but it's also labor issues, and you've got competition at the border, and. So fascinating.
And I think
Go on.
By raising the profile of quality tea, so the tea that we pay above fair trade price for every single tea that we buy, and by creating that demand where more value is being driven up the supply chain and people are paying more for that product, and that product is then making its way back to the tea growers at origin, that's kind of, at the moment, that's where we see our role, is raising the profile of quality tea rather than low grade, heavily commoditized tea, which is is not paid. There's not. Sorry, I completely lost my words there. Is not paid for. There's much money for.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. I fully follow what you were saying there, and it's kind of what Good and Proper have always done. So you're just doing more of it. Like you say, maintaining the selling better tea and feeding back the value that you're putting on that back into the suppliers.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is that we want to get people to drink more good and proper tea. So that's good tasting, good for the planet, properly produced, and properly paid for.
Awesome. I've got a couple more questions before we go on to talk about the future. We've talked about the merits of loose leaf, but what about tackling scope 3? So you obviously, during your B Corp, you've assessed all your carbon emissions, and your biggest bulk of carbon emissions are coming from me boiling my kettle to make your tea. So it's scope 3. It's out of your control. Can you do anything about that?
So our approach to that at the moment, we worked with a really great company called Zavero, who've done they've done some great, really interesting work in beer. They've helped us measure our scopes 1 to 3. And they've also helped us think about this longer term, right? So rather than seeking out quick wins, I mean, in order for us to have a longer term and bigger impact, sort of our best starting point is to improve the quality of the data. A lot of when you measure your scope 3 is based on generic emission factors. So I think we've benchmarked it. We have, and a lot of it is based on generic emission factor. But now Zavero is saying, okay, now we want to improve the quality of this data. So when you do make changes, they're more impactful. So we're surveying our customers and asking to kind of understand. For an example would be finding out if they're on green tariffs or not. Better understanding what our customers are doing, because I think while looking at it, it is great. You want to understand where that data's come from and improve the quality of it. And then also we're collaborating with the wider industry. So we recently became part of a members organization called the Ethical Tea Partnership, which is a members-based organization, and they run sustainability initiatives all over the world in tea growing countries. So we're a really small player. We were sat around the table with the likes of Typhoo, Sainsbury's, big players in the tea industry. So I think we're sharing knowledge. So discussing as people in tea how we can decarbonize the tea industry, because we're such a small a player. If we were to go to one of our tea partners and saying, you need to change your machinery and release less carbon for our scope 3, that's completely counterintuitive. So we need to align our approach as a tea industry to help find clean solutions for the tea industry as a whole.
Yeah, and your customer, the first point you were making about, the food service customer needs to start thinking, and quite rightly should be, start thinking about net zero by 2050, halving emissions by 2030 or whatever.
Yeah.
And they've got to have a look at how they are indeed serving tea and the emissions that incurs.
Yeah.
Oh, fascinating. Okay. Um, I wanted to say something quick. Have you heard of True Start Coffee? They're another customer of ours. They're Bristol based. Um,
Yeah. I
they're
think
really, they're very ethical. They've got
is it
no
a lady who runs? Is it a lady who founded the business?
husband and wife, Helena
Yeah.
and Stuart. I want to say, I might have that wrong.
Yeah, I
They're,
think we come across them.
yeah, so they similar to you, they're kind of trying to change the face of instant coffee, and they're doing quite a lot in that space, rather like you guys. And what they've had to, and it may or may not be helpful to you, but they've had to develop new packaging, because again,
Yeah.
their biggest carbon issue was the scope 3 at the end, recycling packaging, and how heavy they've actually gone for heavier packaging, but it's more recyclable. So the kind of
Yeah.
carbon emission thing has kind of done that, but
Yeah.
the overall net value is greater. But they have created new packaging, because like you, coffee has to be vacuum packed or very, very well sealed. But that packaging is now being adopted by the rest of the instant coffee community.
True.
So they've kind of they've innovated, and ultimately they've now started to sort of turn the hand of the rest of the wider industry, which is fascinating. But it's worth maybe reaching out to them and talking to them about that packaging. It may or may not help. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. But it's so easy to get sucked into like the finer details of packaging. And actually, another brand said to me the other day, like the biggest, and this is our approach as well, the biggest climate challenge at the moment is climate change and carbon emissions. Recycling is developing, but though, and you obviously want your packaging to end up in the right place. But there is a huge amount when you look at those kind of compostable solutions. Sometimes the actual the
benefit,
they're a lot more carbon intensive
right?
Than other solutions sometimes. So again, it's so difficult and nuanced, and everyone wants to make the right decision, but there's a lot of different factors in play.
And like you say, with
our general approach is
go on, sorry.
Go on.
Oh, I was going to say, with a like you say, it's multifaceted. There's so much that goes into becoming carbon neutral. But with less people, you've either got to join these groups, as a SME, as an SMB, whatever. But also you need to prioritize, and if doing one thing turns the dial much more than doing another, you've got to kind of focus your energies on that one thing, haven't you?
Yeah.
Brilliant. So last few questions. Sorry, we've slightly run over. Are you okay for time?
Yeah. I've got about like 10-15 minutes more.
Perfect. That's all it will take. So let me go. Can you recommend? No. I'll leave that one for a minute. So aspirations for the future. Good and property. Aspirations for the future. What are they, and do you think you have the right things in place to get there?
So yeah, the overall mission is to get more people drinking good tea and raise the profile of quality tea in the UK. So at the moment, our focus is on out of home, as we discussed. So getting more people drinking good tea out of home and understanding why they should be paying more for having a great tasting tea in their cup. So yeah, that's going incredibly well, and we know that we're only scratching the surface in terms of distribution points. So we've got really, really ambitious plans for growth. We've got a really great team. We've got a really strong operational base to build on, I think. And we're currently looking to fundraise to fund that next round of that next stage of growth. So I think outside of food service, we know that our D2C website could be doing a lot more. It hasn't been a focus for the last couple of years, so I think we'll be investing in that and hopefully seeing some growth there. And then I think retail is the ultimate goal, but we're kind of paving the way for that retail to kind of do it right, get it right first time, make sure we sell loads of tea when we're on the shelves in whoever it is, because those are both huge opportunities as well.
Excellent. Have a look at the turmeric company. Do you know Thomas Robson Kano? I'm probably saying his last name wrong. Have you heard of them?
No.
They're another customer of ours, the turmeric company. Their website, because until I ran out of money, I did buy some of their sort of turmeric drinks. They're raw pressed in this
Oh,
country,
okay. Yeah.
incredibly functional little shots.
Yeah.
But their website for me is one of the best website I encounter from a sort of FMCG point of
Oh,
view.
really? Check it out.
They've got subscription stuff going on. They've got videos. They've got reviews popping up. They've got countdowns or count ups going on. It's really buzzy.
Yeah.
It's not on brand for you at all, but there's some functionality there that you might want to
Yeah.
steal.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I'll check
Um,
that out.
what am I talking about now? So last two questions. Tell me if anything, what are you reading at the moment? So what do you listen to? What helps you kind of keep abreast of things from maybe from a work point of view, but also how you switch off?
Okay. So from a work point of view, I listen to Dan Pope's Hungry podcast. I've known Dan for a while. He's a great guy, and he manages to get really amazing guests and has some really insightful conversations. And it's through FMCG, mainly SME focused. So there's just he gets great guests on there. I honestly don't know how he gets them on there.
We sponsor him, and we sponsor his espresso, which is his short little kind of edibles. And I was talking to him this week because we're looking to renew the sponsorship, but he's just had like his best month ever, his best 2 or 3 months ever. And I think there's 2 or 3 people he's interviewed where they've shared something because they're an influencer. And it's Rory Sutherland is one, but the other 2 names escape me. But like, yeah, he's been at it for a very long time, and I think he's starting to see that kind of takeoff and hockey curve.
Yeah.
So very exciting.
They're good for
him.
And then the Young Foodies newsletter is good when that comes out. That's good from work side of things. And to relax, I live in Brighton. I live by the sea. I have a dog. I like to walk my dog along the seafront. I do a lot of sport as well, so that's probably how I relax.
Brilliant. Awesome.
Walk along the beach with the dog on a nice sunny day.
What's your dog called?
He's called Manny, and he's named after Manny Life Peanut Butter.
No way. Does Dan know that?
Yeah.
Sorry, people who don't know, you might know, but Dan Pope, who's the host of Hungry Podcast, used to be kind of the sales development guy for Manny Life Peanut Butter, which is the best peanut butter in the world, is it not?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, plug out to Manny Life. So good, I named my dog after it, and he absolutely loves it. It's far too expensive to feed to him.
It is far too expensive. We have a dog, and I have a dog jar of peanut butter with dog written on it. So nobody uses it because it's the cheap stuff.
Yeah, you're not alone.
Final.
He gets a pot.
Pardon?
He gets an empty pot when it's finished. When it's finished, he gets the pot and he goes and finishes it off and destroys the pot in the garden.
Lovely. Loving it. Yeah. Final question then. We talked about that. Yeah. So I've got it 2 ways. But what is your 2 biggest learnings from your time at Good and Proper Tea? Or can you give me what's your best bit of advice for food and beverage brands looking to scale? Same different questions, similar kind of answer.
Yeah, I would say be patient. I think as a small brand, a challenger brand, there's infinite distractions and lots of shiny things that you can get distracted by and be like, this feels great. And actually, when you're really small, trial and doing lots of different things and being nimble and being able to make those mistakes is great. But I would say stay focused and disciplined. Someone once advised us that on a listing, your focus should be narrow and deep. So we're constantly reminding ourselves like that. So we excel on that one listing. Don't spread yourself too thin across loads and loads of retail listings and food service. And just if you don't have the bandwidth to manage it, just focus on that one thing, do it well, and be slow and steady. And I think we're now starting to see that approach pay off as well. What else? Ask people for help. Don't be afraid to. I think we've got a great network of other brands, not necessarily tea brands, but food FMCG brands who've probably faced similar challenges to us whether that's different routes to market or different working with a contract caterer and who you might not have worked with. And people are, there's lots of people with great experience who are willing to help. So don't be afraid to ask for help. And then eventually it will be your turn and people will come to you. So now, whenever anyone asks me for help, I'm like, let's sit down and have a chat, because people did it for me. So I think you kind of have to pay it forward. And then hopefully, as we scale, then we'll speak to the people who are in the next stage of their growth, and they'll help us. And we're.
It's a nice community like that, isn't it? The food and bev communities. We obviously serve quite a few different types of customer. If you have a product you can use Unleashed, but a good percentage of our base is food and bev brands, and it is always lovely being in that space and talking to people in that space. It feels like a real community.
Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. That is it. I'm sorry I've run over. It's been.
Thank you. That's all right.
Really pleasure talking to you.